Hey guys, it's Mike here, and a little while back, Josh from Dragon Ball Nation and myself talked about Dragon Ball Super Hero on the debut edition of Laughingstock Nation, a podcast that totally has had a lot of episodes recently. But nonetheless, what ended up happening is we went really in depth into it after we each saw it in theaters for the first time, and since that point, I noticed that I never actually did a dedicated video review for it. I've seen the movie multiple times since then, with me seeing it twice in theaters and now on Blu-ray when it first came out. So I figured, why not actually give it its own dedicated review, put it on this channel, and go in depth into that. And since I have it on Blu-ray, and as you guys can see, I am a big collector with all the movies behind me, well, I decided to do something I've always wanted to do on this channel, which is an unboxing where I open this up. So I'm going to cut to that right now, and then I'll get into the review itself. Hey guys, it's Mike here, and I just got this Blu-ray for Dragon Ball Super Hero in the mail, and I've always wanted to do one of these unboxings on this channel. I always thought it would be fun. So let's get into that right now, because I am a big Blu-ray collector, and somebody who prefers to always get everything on home video when possible, because it always looks better than streaming, nowhere near as compressed, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that as I get into this review. But nonetheless, as you can see right here, we have this cool background with the backdrop on the dust jacket. I always love these dust jackets on these Blu-rays, with Gohan and Piccolo, if you can even see that. You gotta love these webcams. And the thing is that, as it goes in depth, bigger, mightier, super. It is Dragon Ball Super after all. So it's right here, that big branding, as you could see. So let's take this off. We got this awesome plastic right here that covers it up, tells you it's brand new. I got this thing right off of Amazon. I pre-ordered it. One of the very few things I actually pre-ordered, and it was pretty cool to get it in the mail on release day, and I didn't even have to wait until like 2 in the morning or have somebody having destroyed it. So that's a great thing, because Amazon's shipping definitely can use some work. Isn't that right, Jeff Bezos? So kind of get on that, please. Definitely don't collab with Susan, who runs YouTube, though, because she's probably not going to help you out too much with that. But nonetheless, as you could see right here, I open this up, and let's get into this. Oh no, I ruined all the value because I unsealed it. Don't worry, I'm going to have some stuff sealed too. So as we can see right here, we have the movie and special features on the left, which is the Blu-ray. And then on the right, we have the DVD. Now, in terms of power scaling, Blu-rays are way better than DVDs. So are you trying to tell me that Piccolo is more powerful than Gohan? Maybe his ultimate. Well, definitely his ultimate. But you know exactly what happens in that movie, because not only does Piccolo get yet another form on top of this one, but also Gohan gets a brand new form because he gets really angry about Piccolo. So maybe if they had the 4K one in America right now, I would have opened it up, and Gohan Beast would be the 4K one. Who knows? Nonetheless, it does have the special features and the regular movie on DVD. Although I would have to say I am a little disappointed that it doesn't come with a booklet. It doesn't come with, anything really other than the movies and the kind of digital content. I always prefer to get something like this, where it actually has all of those real features on it. I'm a big collector, as I said before. I love those booklets, those packs, but I am getting the Japanese one imported, the 4K version. Unfortunately, it doesn't have subtitles on it, but that one's probably going to stay sealed. It has all those cool goodies in it, and then I'm going to get the 4K version when it finally comes out in America, I believe later this year. Don't quote me on this. Maybe 10 years from now, somebody will watch this and be like, Mike, that never came out. What are you talking about? But nonetheless, here's the unboxing. I love doing this, and let's get into the review itself. So as of this video, I've seen the movie 3 times. Twice in theaters, once in English, once in Japanese, both in IMAX, which was awesome, and now on home theater. And, according to Stanley Kubrick, if you see a movie 3 times, you're finally qualified to see it, and I, wish to live up to the standards of one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, so why not talk more in depth about this movie and what I thought about it?
Like I said, I did talk about that in depth with my initial impression of it on that video. You could see in the description, the end screen, and maybe the cards if those things even work anymore on your device. But when I saw that movie, I really ended up enjoying it. However, does this movie still hold up on rewatch, not just the first time, but multiple times afterward? Well, in terms of that, I would have to say it is, in fact, a resounding yes. Because in some ways, I actually like this movie even more now that I'm watching it again, months after the fact when it first came out, than when I initially saw it the first time. Of course, there was that great theatrical experience, but a lot of times you never truly know how much you like a movie or how much you can appreciate that film until you see it released on home video, when you have a smaller screen, when you're much more easily able to pause it, to pick certain things out, and of course to see not only the pros but also the cons. And is this movie perfect? Definitely not. Of course, it is a Dragon Ball Super movie after all, but nonetheless, in terms of everything going on in it, I think overall it's a positive. Overall, in terms of the things that are going for this movie, first off, let's talk about the obvious, which is the art style itself. Now, in terms of that was one of the biggest things that I was critical of going into the movie. I don't want to see a CGI version of Dragon Ball. I want to see 2D hand-drawn animation. I want to see something that looks like Dragon Ball Z used to, the original Dragon Ball, which was still a cell animation, and I've never really been as into the digital animation since we switched there, even though in a movie like Dragon Ball Super Broly, which I've also seen many times and own on Blu-ray, which is, somewhere behind me on that shelf somewhere. It's kind of hard to see on here. Fact of the matter is that, I thought that movie looked great, but nonetheless, even the little bits of CGI they used stood out for me in a negative way. However, when the entire movie is CGI, it doesn't really have that effect. Sure, there are definitely some rough moments during the film, especially when we first get introduced to it, in large part because of the fact that they start the movie out with a 2D animation kind of showing a recap of what happened, and then we get directly into the 3D, so there's that kind of jarring jump into this new style. And I guess the scenes that in some cases stand out the worst would probably be the scenes on Beerus's planet, where we first get introduced to Whis, to Goku again, to Vegeta, and some of it's really not looking too great there. It almost looks like fan animation at points. But as the movie goes on, the animation gets better and better and better until that final half an hour, which is just a straight up visual spectacle as all the different fighters are combating the ultimate villain of the film. And of course, there are going to be spoilers in this, naturally, because the fact that this movie has come out, I've already talked about it in depth. So Everyone versus Cell Max is a really great, visual spectacle, especially with the art style where, when we see Gohan, for example, tapping into that new form, Piccolo tapping into that new form, and of course, the final Makanko Sapo special beam cannon, well, some of that just looks utterly amazing. And, when it comes to other pros, I would have to say that overall, I don't dislike the 3D CGI. However, with that being said, if this was done in a traditional 2D format, if this was done like an old school 2D movie, I would have actually preferred that even more. But that's because I prefer that art style overall, which is one of the things that made me get into animation and anime, especially in the 1990s in the first place. So that is a thing that is both a good and a bad about the film. Additionally, something else on technical aspect I have to really highly praise would have to be the music, because the music is great. There are so many scenes that are elevated to the next level in this movie because of the fact that it has such great music behind it. The technical aspects of the film are generally really good. The music, the direction, the writing is oftentimes really good in certain things. I'll get a little bit more into that, of course, as well. And generally, I feel like the people who run the movie division at Toei, those who make these movies alongside Toriyama, who's contributing to the screenplays and so on, seem to have a much stronger understanding of what Dragon Ball is, especially Dragon Ball Z and onward, compared to the people who make the anime and the manga. The people who make the movies are far more talented than Toyotaro, than the guys who are working on the anime right now. It's ironic because Toyotaro, who's drawing the manga, is supposedly working alongside Toriyama, and yet he can never put out anything quite as good as this. And that's what I have to say. In terms of the overall quality of this movie, of Dragon Ball Super Broly, those are better than everything in the anime. Yes, better than Goku Black. Yes, better than the Tournament to Power. Even though the story itself in this movie isn't quite anything groundbreaking or anything amazing to write home about, it is still a better experience in this and in Dragon Ball Super Broly than any of Dragon Ball Super the anime, especially those remakes of movies that were done better. And again, the movies were better overall of this entire era than anything we've gotten in the anime or in the manga, especially. So overall, that's a big thing. That is one of the things that always kind of gives me a little bit of hope for the future of Dragon Ball Super, which is the people making these things right here, these movies, because they clearly know what they're doing, and they should be the ones who are taking over this story, not the people who have done it in the past and who have shown that they clearly don't have the same capabilities as those others. Now, when it comes to the actual story itself, like I said before, nothing amazing. It is basically a rehash of the Cell Saga and the Red Ribbon Army arc of the original Dragon Ball. The Red Ribbon Army comes back, this time in the Shell Corporation of the Red Ribbon Pharmaceutical Company, or the Red Pharmaceutical Company, run by Magenta, the son of Commander Red. I guess even though he was like a very short person, let's say, he was still pulling some tail at the time, that he was a man in power after all, and basically, Bond villain after all. But nonetheless, I guess that it was before Commander Black shot him. But either way, he comes back, and so too does another descendant of the Shadow Man behind the scenes, Dr. Gero, or Gero in the English dub, which is Dr. Hedo, who, interestingly, in the story, one of the things I do really like about it is how they kind of turn everything on its head. This time around, Dr. Hedo isn't doing these things for evil. Instead, he's doing it because the fact that he thinks that Bulma and those who are the Z Fighters are actually all evil aliens who have invaded the Earth and are trying to slowly take it over and turn everyone on the planet into their own personal workforce. So Dr. Hedo is deceived by the Red Ribbon Army to make new Jinzo Ningen, new androids, the Gammas, so that they are able to combat and take on these evil beings that they think that they are. And so a lot of fun ensues as a result. They attack Piccolo, thinking he's still the evil Demon King. Apparently they didn't keep up on all of their history and everything like that. And, they kidnap Pan so that they're able to bring out Gohan, who they see as the ultimate fighter, man with the ultimate form after all. And then in turn, they tell us, which is a little thing I'll get into momentarily with the power scaling, that the new androids are equal to Goku and Vegeta in their power, and they are the ones who our main characters have to battle against. And basically, because Goku and Vegeta are kind of conveniently written off, they're overtraining on Broly's planet, because despite the fact that Goku is always implied to live with his family during this 10-year gap, he's never there for some reason, which makes, him flying off with Oob not really even a big deal at the end of Dragon Ball Z anymore. And as a result, what happens? Well, while Goku and Vegeta are fighting, helping to train Broly on another planet, and Beerus is really into Chilai, like pretty much every single male person, most of them who read and watch Dragon Ball Super at this point. Nonetheless, Gohan and Piccolo have to band together to take on the ultimate foes that they're facing in order to overcome them and put an end to the Red Ribbon Army at the same time. So that's one of the things that is really good about this movie as well. It isn't, once again, like almost every single arc of Dragon Ball Super, the Goku and Vegeta show. The two characters who've gotten way too much screen time in this section of the series, this section of the franchise, are shoved over to the side with a fan service character, Broly, and then in turn, we're given fan service for other characters, like my favorite character of Gohan and one of my favorite characters of Piccolo, and then in turn, have them battling against really every everything in this movie is ultimately fan service. And I like to keep saying ultimate because of all the puns with Gohan, especially at the end. But the thing that I really liked about it is that instead of it being, necessarily someone who has been the main character for most of the franchise, the majority of this film actually revolves around Piccolo is the main character and shows that he can carry a film, that he has a really interesting kind of arc within it, and we see his progress even more as a character. And that's another really great thing about this movie, the sense of progress, which is so missing from most of Dragon Ball Super. Because, of course, it is an interquel stuck between a 10-year time skip, and we already know everything that's going to happen. But this movie firmly cements everything moving closer to the end of that time skip, and again, giving a little bit more hope to us who have been watching and following this franchise and actually remember that time skip is still there. And we're going to finally be able to get to it as we see that Pan is older, that she's training with Piccolo, even though I would have liked her to be trained with Goku to be consistent with the end of Z, and, learning how to fly. And a lot of the scenes with her are some of the most emotional of the movie for me overall. Seeing, Gohan's child, my favorite character's child, now growing up and learning these powers and becoming a more focal character. And a lot of that slice of life aspect we get in this film. Of we see Piccolo's home maybe for the first time, and all the plushies that they keep giving him that he hates, but then he has not only his downstairs table, but then you see in the post credits that he actually has like a whole upstairs just filled with those plushies because they won't stop giving them to him. And then we see she's going to school and Piccolo picks her up sometimes, and Gohan actually gets some development in terms of what he even is a scholar of, because they never even told us the entire franchise up until this movie what Gohan is a scholar of, and apparently it's insects, which honestly, I would have preferred if he was like a scholar of alien civilizations or martial arts or something to actually, tie and bridge those two gaps of him being a martial artist and him being a scientist and a scholar together. So that in turn that, we wouldn't keep having this endless cycle that unfortunately this movie does perpetuate again, of Gohan training, getting super strong and being the strongest there is, unlocking some new form, and then just giving up martial arts altogether because don't worry, Goku and Vegeta will take care of everything, right, Piccolo? It's like, that is one of the most frustrating aspects of Gohan's character in Super, that they keep doing this every single time. Every time Gohan comes back, even when he is one of the main characters of the movie, what happens? Oh, Gohan stopped training, and he's not a martial artist anymore. He can't sense anyone, even though his little toddler daughter can. He's struggling to hold up his clothing that might be the same weight as when he wore it as a kid, which is confusing based upon what we saw in the past. Oh, don't worry, Piccolo, we'll never have any more battles or anything like that. Goku and Vegeta will take care of that. And it really can be annoying because, Gohan never seems like he does have progress in his character, but a lot of the time, or a lot of this movie, is devoted to, in fact, in some ways seeming to fix that, because not only do they bring Gohan back, have him kind of train on screen a little bit, teach us that he was training off screen to use the Makanko Sapo, but finally all of it comes together with him, raging out and transforming into a new purple silver form that's like Ultra Instinct and Rose combined. I don't know, I guess Trunks' form and stuff like that together. Gohan Beast, not necessarily the best name, but it's something, I guess. And then being able to fight against Cell Max. But really the best transformation for me in the movie comes down to the character who spends most of the time on our screen as the main character, which is Piccolo. Because even though it is a little contrived that Piccolo does use the Dragon Balls to unlock his potential, which at least they do provide an in-universe explanation of Dende upgrading the Dragon Balls, which pulls directly from the manga and the Cell Saga, and this movie does at least do a little bit of writing away these inconsistencies and issues and really kind of dumb plot points in, ways that actually give us a little bit more suspension of disbeliefs and more verisimilitude. At the end of the day, Piccolo not only gets like a new orange, well, yellowish form, almost looking like, what he did in Dragon Ball Evolution when Spike the Vampire played him, same guy who voiced Zamasu. But then at the same time, what happens? Well, Piccolo then gets another form when he's fighting against Gamma, which then powers him up even more, makes him this giant bulked up form that kind of reminds me of Goliath from Gargoyles or something like that, where he comes in and, Gamma's like punching him. It does nothing to him. And then Piccolo is able to just like one shot him and wreck him. And, it's great to see Piccolo finally getting more shine. I love that Gohan's getting more shine and coming back and being a prominent character again. But Piccolo finally getting something, even though it's a transformation, this franchise, they're kind of overdone. The fact that they're doing something with Piccolo, one of the most fascinating characters in the entire franchise with the best character development out of almost anyone, is really great and something that made me enjoy the movie more, even if you want to write it off as fan service or the inconsistencies. But on the topic of those inconsistencies, there definitely are a lot of things in this movie that don't really make sense. Like, for example, we see when Goku and Vegeta are training on Beerus's planet, Vegeta's sitting there meditating. Goku walks up to him and he's like, that's not training. It's like, Goku, that meditating is a thing, and visually seeing past something. You literally talked about this in the Cell Saga that they're kind of ripping off in this movie about how Vegeta is seeing past Super Saiyan and all this stuff. So why are you saying it's not training? Did you hit your head again in Super? That would explain a lot. Also, then Vegeta's like, oh, that Jiren wasn't really that much more powerful than us, but he just had so much intent behind it. He was calm and he only unleashed himself when he attacked. It's like, yeah, Ultra Instinct. This is literally the thing that Goku achieved when he won the tournament, and yet in this movie they don't seem to remember that was a thing, even though it obviously is, and that's Goku's biggest power up until this point. It's bizarre for that reason. And then, of course, there are other things that happen, like, for example, somehow the Red Ribbon Army has a video of Trunks killing Frieza as a Super Saiyan, even though Dr. Gero had no idea that Super Saiyan was a thing and that any of this had even happened by the time that he encountered Goku. So it's kind of like, why do they have that video, but Gero somehow didn't? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And then, of course, the power scaling. Like, they definitely do try at points in this movie to make it make some sense, but the fact that they just like somehow are able to make androids that are equal to Goku and Vegeta, even though they don't really even realize how powerful they are, and they describe them as mid-level bosses compared to like Gohan and Piccolo, is odd. I guess we're supposed to just believe that they're equal to Goku and Vegeta's full power in their final forms. And then, of course, there's, everything with Cell Max, everyone fighting against him at the end. You see like Krillin, Goten, Trunks, 18, like all these people dealing damage to him. And it's like, how? This guy is supposed to be more powerful than every single villain in the history of this franchise, which should all just tank every single thing that everyone's throwing at him, and then somehow like characters are able to knock him around and Krillin's able to do this or that, and it's kind of like, I get that you want to give him a little bit of shine, but it is a little absurd when you're seeing these things happen. But really, my biggest con with the entire movie is Cell Max, because Cell is my favorite villain in this franchise. He's the perfect villain. The summation of all of the other villains, the other characters that came before him, heroes alike, combined together, that Gohan ultimately overcame in the ultimate passing of the torch from Goku to him, and then in turn, the signifying of him taking over as the new main character, which he did until Toriyama, changed his mind and shifted it back to Goku in the Buu saga, basically like 2/3 of the way in. So with regard to that, Cell just, is a mindless screaming maniac, which is basically just Broly again in another movie. It just, when he powers up, he screams and he doesn't have any dialogue in Super Broly. And then this movie, it's kind of like Cell Max appears and he fights. It's like, well, what about his personality? What about this? What about that? Oh, his mind isn't finished developing, so it's totally fine. It's like, well, not really. It just makes him into a generic kaiju monster. So even though he looks like Cell, he, I guess, has some of Cell's abilities. It doesn't really seem like it. At the end of the day, it's irrelevant because, he's just a powerful Harudegarn like character who just kind of shows up and then ultimately gets defeated by Gohan getting mad that he sees Piccolo getting beaten up and getting a contrived new form, which, at least there was way more build up to Gohan getting a form in the Cell Saga. His training with Goku, he has this hidden potential. Let him get Mad Cell, Android 16 getting killed. In this, he just sees Piccolo getting beaten up, and so he gets really angry while channeling his power, and he just surpasses literally everyone in the franchise again. It isn't really as impactful, even though it is kind of a visual spectacle and kind of an awesome moment to take in. But when you think about it, it isn't really as compelling as a result. So overall, when it comes down to that, there's probably a lot more I could talk about, but this is a review off the top of my head after all. I would have to say that Dragon Ball Super Hero is one that I really enjoy. It has a lot of great rewatch value. I could rewatch this movie again and again, English and Japanese, and still get a lot of enjoyment out of it. It's one that I'm going to enjoy revisiting for a long time to come, although maybe some of those issues might mount with me more over time, like when I see it for the 5th time, the 10th time, the 100th time, like all these other movies that I watch. And then at that point, we'll have to kind of see, how it holds up years from now, what the overall perspective is. But overall, I think it's pretty great. Is it better than Dragon Ball Super Broly? In some ways, sure. Like in terms of like the actual progress of the world, the slice of life, the fact that it isn't just Goku and Vegeta against, Broly again, stuff like that is all great. But overall, I'm not too sure I like it as much as that movie. Maybe in the future I'll do another comparison or I'll watch them back to back and kind of see which one I like more. But like I said, this movie has even grown a little bit more on me over time. So that goes to show you that I think it's a pretty good Dragon Ball experience. But what do you guys think? Let me know your own thoughts down below in the future. Also, did you like the inclusion of the unboxing in here? I thought I'd throw it in there, even though that camera I use isn't necessarily the best quality. But nonetheless, maybe next time I'll use a better one like this, all 4K of it. But let me know your own thoughts down below in the comments. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.
Yeah, and you better subscribe.